participles. Let's take a look, brief overview at what past participles are and how to use them in English sentences. So a past participle is often called the third form of a verb. You have the base form, the past form, and the past participle. For example, go is the base form, went is the past, gone is the past participle. Sometimes, actually most of the time in English, the past form and the past participle are the same if it is a regular verb. But there are many common verbs in English that are irregular, and those past participles are unique. They are different from the simple past. So this is what we're looking at, the third form of the verb, the past participle. These are used with passive verbs. Passive verbs are verbs that are focusing on the receiver of an action. When you want to focus on the receiver and not the doer of an action, you put the receiver in the subject position and you make the verb passive. How do you do that? You use the be verb as an auxiliary verb, the beginning verb, the helping verb, and then you use the past participle. So, Tom was injured in an accident last week. This is using the be verb, was, and the past participle, injured, to show that Tom received the injury in the accident. Here's our past participle. We can also use past participles in perfect tenses, perfect verbs. This uses the auxiliary verb have, which makes it totally different from the passive with be. So if you're using have as an auxiliary verb, like here, instead of the be verb, it's a totally different meaning. It's the perfect idea, which is the idea that an action happened before a certain point in time that you are focused on. So no idea of receiving the action. It's talking about an action before a certain time or another action. So here, Tom had forgotten to follow safety procedures. If we want to give the reason why he was injured, so we start with this. Tom was injured in an accident last week. This is at a certain time in the past. So that's our simple past. Then we want to go before that time to explain the reason why he was injured. You use the perfect here, the past perfect, had forgotten. So have is our auxiliary verb, and then you use the past participle. You can see here, this is a regular verb with just ed, injured, same as the simple past. Here, this is irregular, different from the simple past, which is forgot, and this is forgotten. You can also use past participles as adjectives. If you watch the video on present participles, you see that present participles are used as adjectives with an active meaning. Past participles are used as adjectives with a passive meaning. So same as up here, the idea that you're receiving the action. We need to fix the broken window. Here is our past participle. It is describing the window. Window is a noun, so broken is an adjective that describes it. This says that someone broke the window. The window received this action. Now, it's also possible that you might have a verb that is intransitive. That means it does not take a direct object. So there is no passive form if a verb is intransitive. If you have an intransitive verb, sometimes you may use the past participle for a past meaning. Maybe that comes from the idea of the perfect tense. So for an example, you can say the milk spoiled. This is intransitive. There's no direct object. You can't say the milk spoiled something. The milk spoiled. It went bad. It curdled. It got no good. So this is an intransitive. If you want to use it as an adjective for the milk, you can use it as this idea of that it has already spoiled. So please throw away the spoiled milk. Here's our past participle describing the milk. So here's an example using it with a passive meaning. Here's an example using with a past meaning. You have to be careful. This is not good for all verbs anytime, but it is used very commonly, and it's good to pay attention to that and then start using them. This is especially problematic when you're talking about verbs of emotion, verbs of feeling, interesting, interested. What you want to remember is that generally when you're talking about these verbs, when you're talking about a person, the person is receiving the emotion or the feeling that something else or someone else is causing. So generally when you're talking about a person, you're usually going to be using the past participle for the passive meaning. You're usually going to say, I was very interested in the movie, because the movie was causing the interest. And you are feeling it. You are receiving it. There are situations where a person could be causing it, like a teacher can be boring if the teacher is causing the students to feel bored. So be careful about how you use these. If it's active meaning, you use the ing form. If it's the receiving, the emotion, usually for the person, that's the past participle. You don't want to say, I was boring. Typically, that's not a good thing to say. Usually, you want to say, I was bored. It means I was like this. Finally, reduced clauses. Adjective clauses, when you have a clause that describes a noun. The book written by my father is on my desk. This is reduced. The complete form, the book which was written by my father is on my desk. This is an adjective clause. Starts with which, ends with father. If the relative pronoun, who, which, or that, is the subject of the adjective clause, you can omit the pronoun, omit the be verb, and if the verb is passive, so again, passive meaning, what's left? The past participle, that's what's left. So this is now at the beginning of the reduced clause, which is now called a phrase, but don't worry about that. It's at the beginning of this, you took out the other things. And you say, the book written by my father, describing the book. So, remember these ideas for past participle, ideas of passive and ideas of before a time.